Perfect. All right. So we are now recording. We've got all the participants in the chat. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm really excited to share with you this presentation on how to kickstart your network and build meaningful career connections. My name is Martin McGovern, and I'm a career advisor, career coach here at Udacity. Now that you have completed the Kickstart Your Job Search Challenge, we're going to just take it to the next level. We're going to really take your job search to the next level and get you connected in the industry that you want to be a part of, get you talking to the people who have the job that you hope to someday have, and really set you up for success in your job search. The first thing to note when it comes to the job search is that 80% of jobs are found through networking. Most jobs are not ever even posted online. And a lot of the jobs that are posted online are posted, sorry, we're gonna continue to let people in as we go here. And most of the jobs that are posted, or a lot of jobs that are posted online, are already filled by people who got the job through networking. So what you wanna do in your job search is really get good at forming connections and finding inroads to companies that are much more personal than the online application portals. Because those online portals are just not going to be the most effective way to get you to where you want to be as fast as you can get there. Now, the only problem with this is that networking is unfortunately the worst, as John Ralphio is doing in this awesome clip from Parks and Rec. But networking is rough because it's awkward. It feels very salesy. It's just not most people's comfort zone to go out and talk to strangers and ask lots of questions and all that jazz. So what we want to do is take a little bit different perspective on networking in order to make sure that we are going about it in the best way possible, in the way that's most comfortable for us, and in the way that is going to actually reap the rewards that we hope it will bring us. Because you don't want to spend all this time networking and then not get anything out of it. That's a lot of time and a lot of stress for very little payoff. But if you do it correctly, networking is one of the best things you can do in your career, not only during the job search, but throughout your entire career. All right, now to break down what we're going to be going through today, the first thing is that networking is a skill you can learn. Now, this goes contrary to what a lot of people believe, which is that you have to be born good at networking. It's just not true. Networking is a skill you can learn, just like, learning Python. It's something that if you are methodical about it and you practice, and the key thing there is practice, you can accomplish it. Number two, networking is about the other person. It's about them. It's not about you. So if you have any qualms about, being too salesy about yourself, or I don't like to talk about myself, sell myself, all that jazz. Let's let another welcome to the presentation. So if you have any worries about it being like too much of a spotlight on you, don't worry too much about it, because networking isn't actually about you. It's about the person you're talking to. So focus on them, and you won't have to feel so nervous about yourself. And then number three, networking feeds on curiosity. So when we go, a lot of times when people go into networking, they hesitate to do so because they don't feel like an expert yet. And we want to break that mental barrier and make sure that when you're going out there, you're more interested in learning than you are in being some expert in the field. And then we're going to talk about how you get to start networking today. There's going to be a breakout later where you're going to get to talk to each other and put into practice some of these things that we're chatting about today. All right, let's jump on in. Number one, networking is a skill that you can learn. Practice and you will improve. Now, here's the reason why networking is probably one of the most uphill battle things for a career coach to get people to do. It's because the majority of the population is actually quite shy. As you can see from these stats, 40% of I don't know, the world population, 40% of people report themselves as being shy. Now, the nice thing about that is that you're in good company. If you feel shy about networking, no worries at all. You have lots of people around you that feel the same way, and they've been able to accomplish it, as we can see by this second stat. 40% of people used to be shy. Now, you really, sorry, we're just letting people in as they come. 40% of people used to be shy. And that used to be is awesome because it means that you can beat this. You can actually go from being in that 40% who are shy into the 40% who used to be shy. That's actually a journey I've gone on myself. And then 20% of people are not shy at all. If you're in this in this program here and you're in that camp, good for you. You probably don't need tons and tons of help, but even if you are in the 20% who's not shy, this will help you focus and help you find a better way to get more specific in your networking efforts. Now, here's the key thing. You're going to get it wrong before you get it right. I'm going to tell you a real quick story here about my worst informational interview and talk to you and just let you know that no interaction you have is going to be the end of the world. So back in college, I was taking a how to get a job seminar, very similar to what y'all are doing right now. And they said, someone give your elevator pitch. I was in marketing. I stood up, I gave my pitch, and my teacher said, I have someone to introduce you to. He made an introduction to a guy who worked at an advertising agency in Chicago, and I got so excited. I put on a suit. I went out to meet the guy, but the week leading up to it, I did way too much research. I read every white paper he'd ever written, and I realized that I'd actually been reading his recommended reading list for 4 years. I over-prepared. Then when I actually got there, I realized I prepared all the wrong things because when I sat down, he said, "What brings you here today?" And I said, "I had a great pitch in my How to Get a Job seminar class." And he goes, "Give me the pitch." Now I had spent all this time thinking about all this research that I was trying to do that it had pushed my pitch out of my head. And I tried to say it and I choked. That big lump in your throat. I tried again and I choked. I asked if I could try one more time. And the third time I choked again. And about 15 minutes into this informational interview, he was like, I got work to do. Thanks for coming in. And I went home and I was like, oh, I'm never going to let that happen again. And I spent years just dedicating myself to overcoming that fear, getting better at these things, and growing. And what ended up happening was about 5-6 years later, that terrible informational interview popped into my head, and I decided to send him an email. And I said, "Hey, thank you for the learning opportunity. You probably don't remember me, but I had one of the worst informational interviews of my life with you, and I've spent a lot of time learning from it, and I really appreciate your time back then." And he wrote back saying, "You're right. I have no idea who you are, but I can see you've improved just by the subject line of this email. Let's grab coffee." And he and I got together, talked marketing. I learned all about the ad industry, and we had a really great time talking for 3 hours in Evanston. So even if you mess something up terribly, the person will probably forget you, and you can always try again in the future. So I just want that to be the baseline understanding here, is that none of this is life or death. We are here to learn, to grow, to get advice from people, to answer questions that are on our mind, and to figure out how to break into this next role. And the only way we can do that is by talking to other people. Which brings us to our next point. Networking is about asking questions. You want to lead all of your conversations with excited curiosity. Now, this goes counter to a lot of the things that people think when it comes to networking. They think I need to go in and I need to talk about the job and I need to be an expert in the field and I need to have all the answers. No, you don't need to even have a single answer. All you need is lots of good questions. And we'll talk about how to get good questions today. And the other thing I want you to know is that you've done this in the past. You have met coworkers, you have gone on interviews, you have made friends, you've been to networking events. You've done this before. And while it's always scary to, get back into something if you haven't done it in a while, networking actually, it's just having conversations with people. And they could be about the job, they could be about something completely different. And we'll get into that. But don't worry so much about putting a lot of emphasis on these conversations. They're just conversations. You're just here to learn. And if you're learning properly, you're going to find opportunities. Now, before you go out there and just start randomly talking to every single person on the street, you want to get specific about who and what you're going to be, who you're going to network with and what you're going to be talking to them about. So here are the 3 things that you really want to nail down before you start reaching out to people. Number 1, you want to know exactly what city you're looking to work in. Because people are going to say, oh, you're looking for a new job? Where are you looking to work? Are you looking to move? Are you looking to stay here? Are you looking to be remote? What exactly are you trying to accomplish? Now, a lot of people say, I'm willing to work anywhere. The problem with that is that when you're talking to people and you say, I'm willing to work anywhere, they don't know how to help you because it's too overwhelming for them to think about the whole country. So you have to be very specific when you talk to people about what you want. So if you say, I really want to work in Chicago, Austin, and San Francisco, at least you've narrowed it down to 3, but I would encourage you to get down to 1. You also want to be extremely specific about what industry you're most interested in. Again, a lot of people say, well, I'm interested in a lot of different industries, or I have no preference. Well, how are the people that you're talking to supposed to be able to help you if you don't give them the information they need to help you? So get specific about your industry. Maybe it's education, maybe it's transportation, maybe it's flying cars, whatever the thing might be. Be specific about your industry. And again, you could have priorities of multiple industries, but know who you're talking to and systematically go through it. And then finally, the job title. You should all at least have 1 to 3 job titles that you're really focused on. And what you want to do is prioritize them and, again, systematically work through them in order to find these opportunities. All right. Now, when you're thinking about networking, it's a bit of a tricky word because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and it's a bit of a loaded term. So what I want to do here is sort of change our mindset around networking to not be so much about the networking part and to be more about the nerding out piece of it. And everyone, if you are a nerd like me, I don't know, it's fun to nerd out. This is a networking group called Code in the Dark. And they, literally have Star Wars themed coding parties with fog machines in order to make networking more fun. And they have it be a competition and a challenge. And there's a lot of fun ways to go about networking that are not just, do you have a job? Yes or no? Okay, no, goodbye, right? You can do it in a lot more fun way. I actually know someone who really wanted to break into the sports world. So what they did was they started their own sports tech meetup where they brought people together to talk about new technologies in sports. And that actually led to him being able to reach out to the CEO of his favorite company to come in and be a speaker at one of their events. So now, not only is he networking with people who all nerd out about the same things he does, sports and technology, but he's getting to meet the heads of the companies that he's most interested in because he decided to take his nerding out to the next level. And then you also want to take a look at who you already know. If you're really, really nervous about getting out there and talking to people, start with the people you know. Start with people in this group. Start with your family. Start with your friends. Get comfortable having coffee with people and having conversations about your career. It's a very important thing to get comfortable with. Start with people you know, then move out of your comfort zone. And then think about where the people you want to network with actually are online. Maybe they're on Twitter. Maybe they're on Meetup. Maybe they're on LinkedIn. Where are the people who you want to meet hanging out, online, offline, or other? Now, this picture of Clash of Clans here is here for a reason. It's because one of the students that I coach actually was playing Clash of Clans quite a bit, and had gone to the point where they had a Slack group where they all talked about Clash of Clans together. Now, I've never played Clash of Clans. I don't know much about it, but apparently it's really engaging. And they would all have this big Slack channel, and in it, they would mainly talk about the game, but they would also talk about their personal life. And he talked about how he was trying to find a job. Well, it turned out that about 6 other people in the group all did the work that he wanted to be doing. So they all ended up getting together for drinks and coffee and helping him with his job search. So you can find these people all over the place. There's the regular places, Meetup, LinkedIn, but apparently Clash of Clans is not a bad place to work on your job search. And here's a couple places where you can do that, online and offline. Online, Slack, forums, LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, blogs, YouTube. Offline, Meetup, Eventbrite, hackathons, startup hubs, co-working spaces, alumni events. You get the picture. Get out there and start meeting people. What relationships are you building? Now, this is where you really, really want to make sure that you're providing value to the people that you're meeting with. You don't want to just go out and take from the world. So as you're thinking about these conversations you're having with people, listen for the problems that they have and try and find ways to help. Which brings us to point number 2. Networking is about them, not about you. If you give, you shall receive. Why would someone actually want to help you? This is like the big question that I get asked a lot. It's like, why would I reach out to them? Why would they want to get coffee with me? Well, we actually live in a very social society where people feel good when they're helping others. And so if you are giving and if you are taking the time to reach out in a, let's say, very open and curious way, people want to help you just because they know that they've had help in their career. They know that they're going to need help in the future, and they want to give what they've already gotten in the past. So maybe right now you aren't able to help them, let's say, advance their career, but let's say they help you get a job now. 5 years from now, when they're out of work, you can help them. And what goes around comes around. And it's really important to realize that, the law of reciprocity is something that really drives people to help. Now, here's the other thing. Who should you reach out to? The recruiter or the master? Now, a lot of folks, when they start networking, they go straight to recruiters. And it's a bit rough because recruiters, they are working for the company. They're not working for you. And so what ends up happening is there's a lot of, let's say, dropped conversations along the way. So there's a lot of excitement. Oh, this recruiter is interested in me, but then I never hear from them again. It's because the recruiter is more focused on the company and is reaching out to hundreds of people to fulfill that need, while you just can't rely on them, basically, at the end of the day. So you want to reach out to the person who has the most influence. You want to reach out to the person who is in the company you want to work at, doing the type of work you want to do. So go to the masters. And then you want to think about why you're reaching out. Now, of course, if you're in the job search, your ultimate goal is to get a job. But if the first thing you say to someone is, do you have a job for me? Their response is going to be, no, I don't. And then you have nothing else to talk to them about. We want to be building relationships. So you want to ask for advice rather than asking for a job. And there's a cliche saying, if you ask for a job, you'll get advice. But if you ask for advice, you'll get a job. And again, this goes back to that curiosity piece. So make sure you're reaching out with the right message. And then try and make them feel valued. Again, if you send an email to someone that's very me, or if you sit down with someone and spend 20 minutes just talking about, everything you're interested in and never let them get a word in, they're not going to feel so great. So what you want to do is make them feel valued by asking them questions about their work. What is it that they've been working on lately? What are the things they're most excited about? Where do they see the industry going? What do they wish they could be working on? All those questions that I'm sure they would love to, go on and on about at home. But, whenever they get home at the end of the day, everyone's just like, be quiet, we're watching our favorite show. So if you give them a chance to talk about themselves, people love to open up and share, what they're excited about. And here's a quick example of an email. So hi, recently while researching this industry, your profile came up. It looks like you're doing some interesting things. All right, so take it back to this one. How do you make them feel good? You let them know that what they do is interesting. So you've taken out all the I's and the me's and you make it all about them. So recently, while researching this industry, your profile came up. It looks like you're doing some interesting things in this role at this company. I'd be curious to learn more about your work. Would you be open to grabbing coffee and chatting at a certain date and time? And again, you want to be specific here, and we're going to break this all down. But make sure that when you're reaching out to people, you're reaching out in a way that matters to them, that is focused on them. Compare this to a different email that someone might send out, which is, I'm looking for a job right now. Can you give me a job? Here's my resume. Let me know if you have any questions. No one has any questions about your resume because no one wants to read your resume, unfortunately. But people are open to grabbing coffee and chatting about what they're working on and how you might be able to help them. Then you also want to make sure that what you do makes it easy for them. Make everything that you say to them, make their life easier. So if you go back to this where it says, would you be open to grabbing coffee and chatting at a specific date and time? Well, if you are too open about that and not specific enough, what ends up happening is people will say something along the lines of, let me know when you're free. When you say, let me know when you're free, what you're actually doing is saying, can you do all the work? Can you go look at your calendar and look at the times and send me a list of times, and then I'll respond to you and say, no, I'm not available those times, then we have to go back and forth. Don't put the homework on them. Do the homework yourself. Offer up a specific date and time that you think would be good, Wednesday at noon, something along those lines. And it also, the great thing about this is it gives them a deadline. If they don't get back to you by Wednesday at noon, you get to follow up on Thursday and say, hey, I didn't hear back from you. I'd love to continue the conversation. Are you free next week? And then what value do you bring? Coffee, conversations, connections, there's a lot more value that you bring than you really are aware of. Even if you just buy someone a coffee, the number of times I've gone out and met up with people just because I was like, yeah, caffeine fix does sound nice today. And they buy my coffee. That's a wonderful thing for someone, just to get their legs moving, get them out of the office for a half hour and give them a little treat. And then as you're talking to them, just keep your ears open. Again, a lot of times we're sitting there going, are they going to give me a job? When what you really should be asking is, what problems do they have that I can solve? Because then what you can do is follow up after the conversation and say, hey, I noticed that you have issues with X, Y, or Z. Here's a project that I've created that might be relatable, and I could help you with that problem if ever you need to bring on a contractor or something of that sort. And then at the end of the conversation, really be aware of how much you're asking for. If you've only met this person once, it's a bit much to say, so can you get me a job, right? But what you could ask for is something about the future. You could say, are there any other people that you would recommend that I chat with? And now you're continuing to build your network within their network, and your networks are merging, which is great. Or you can say, if a job opportunity arose in the future, would you be willing to pass along my resume? And the nice thing about about that type of request is that you're getting them to pre-agree to a future thing. So no one will say no to that typically because it's such a low ask. Would you in the future do something if I reached out? And then you just got to keep your eye on the job listings. And if you do see a listing open up and you send an email to this person, they've already agreed to help you out. And it makes the second request that much easier. And then when you're really sitting down and having that conversation, think about what you're curious about. Don't just talk about the job. What other things are you really curious about? Maybe you're curious about new technologies. Maybe you're curious about the future of artificial intelligence. Maybe you're curious about, self-driving cars or Elon Musk's boring tunnel. What are the things you're most curious about? A great thing about this is everyone lives online now. So you could take a look at their LinkedIn profile, their Twitter profile, their Instagram, and you can find things you have in common with them and bring those up during the conversation. And that's why we want to dive into that curiosity. Things that you can ask during an informational interview. Number one, what are they working on? People love to talk about their work, and not many people like to listen to people talk about their work. So if you're willing to be that ear that they can bend, you're going to be leagues ahead. What are they excited about? If you can get them rolling on something, you're going to be in a good spot. And so let's say you're talking and you stumble across, let's go with the Boring Company. And they are just so excited about the future of transportation and underground tunneling and automate and self-driving cars and flying cars and all that stuff. Ask them what is your view of the future? What do you think transportation is going to look like in a decade or maybe 50 years? And just watch them go. Just let them take the conversation, take the reins, blab on, and just listen for little things that would be fun to follow up with later. Maybe you hear them say something about, tunneling being unsafe or something like that, which is actually very safe. But then you can go find an article and send it to them. Be like, hey, I found this great article. I wanted to follow up, say it was great chatting with you, and we should definitely keep in touch and keep talking about, tunneling and our careers and everything like that. So listen for what they're excited about and bring it back up in the future. Ask them, how does their work impact the industry? This is a question people aren't asked very often. So you might get them to sit back and contemplate a little bit and then really start to think about how their work affects the world. And what's cool about that is if they really sit back and think about it, they might leave with a whole new sense of their job. And you gave that to them, right? By asking that question, you gave them a bit more of a personal insight into the impact of their work. So again, giving something to someone doesn't always have to be a job or a physical thing like a coffee. It could just be a better sense of, of what they do, a better sense of their purpose in the world. So good feelings are a great gift to give someone. Ask them what they wish they could do more of. Get them thinking about the future. People love to think about the future, but there's not a lot of time in our day-to-day to do so. So if you can get them, thinking about, oh, well, in the future, I would really love to, get more into the back end or maybe work on a personal app or maybe get more involved with a certain organization. Whatever the things are they're really interested in, you can get a lot of insights about a person and even the culture of a company by the answers that they give. And then here's a great one. What are they struggling with? Instead of saying what jobs are open, say, what are you struggling with? What are the things that, if you could go focus on something else and take this struggle off your plate, what would that piece of work that you're struggling with be? And what do you wish you could go work on if that wasn't on your plate? Someone might be like, well, I'm so caught up in QA that I never get to work on the bigger projects. And you can say, well, I could potentially help you out there. I'm really good at QA. And if maybe we set up a contract role, I could help out with QA and you can go, spend those 10 to 15 hours a week going and doing the work that you want to do. And again, another kind of version of this question is what is getting in their way? So if you just say like, hey, what's stopping you from achieving the things that you want to achieve in your career? That's a massive question. And what you can end up learning from that is huge, because once you know what's in their way, you can either make introductions or provide solutions or send articles that will help them remove that barrier. And if you're someone who solves problems before they hire you, they know that you're going to be someone who's going to solve problems in the job, and they're going to want to hire you that much more. Then you can say, how do I eliminate these obstacles? This is what we just went through. If you can take something off their plate, that is huge. It's actually, I heard a story about someone who was having a chat with I think a CMO. And the CMO during the chat was, complaining that their dog sitter was out of town or something for this vacation that was coming up. So they said, I love dogs. I'd be happy to watch your dog while your dog sitter's gone. And so what ended up happening was, that was an obstacle the person had. This person solved it. And then they were looked at as someone who solves problems. And they actually got to meet the CMO's family, got to be friendly with the family, and eventually it led to a job. But, it's an odd way to get into a company, but it's, people get creative when they need to move up in their career. And that was how that person had accomplished it. And so there's all sorts of different things that you can do if you think outside the box and try and be a problem solver, not just someone who wants them to give you something. All right, we're coming up at the 40-minute mark. So I want to get us actually together to network a bit today. Who are you going to connect with in this chat? We've got about 53 participants here today. And I want you all to look around the Zoom, say hi, wave to each other. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through these questions here in your breakout groups. And basically, you're going to practice an informational interview with your group. So you're going to be put into pretty big groups here, but you know, go around the virtual room and everyone just try and ask a question and answer a question. So whatever the question might be, it's, you know, what are you most excited about? What are you working on? What do you hope to do in the future? All these questions that we just went over, and come up with your own. Please come up with your own. Anything that piques your curiosity. And that's what we're going to be diving into in the breakout piece today. And really just dive into whatever it is that you want to talk about, because that is what networking is all about. It's not about only talking about the job or only talking about the position. It's about talking about anything that has to do with personal growth, the industries you're interested in, and, you know, the job search in general, let's say. So, you know, as you all get together, you know, talk about new technologies, talk about how weird it is to be forced into these breakout groups and network right after a networking presentation, and how strange that all is on the internet, whatever it is. But we're going to be breaking you out in just a bit to do that. All right, so we're going to break out for the next, I think, 10 or 15 minutes, and then we'll be bringing it back together for the last 5 minutes to wrap up. How was the breakout? Anyone want to share either difficulties or successes in your breakout rooms? What was one topic that someone chatted about in their breakout?
Maybe it is because we know the environment and group environment that every one of us are here to learn about networking. We didn't talk much about, okay, what are the problems you are facing? Can I help? And things like that. So instead, I think we ended up in talking, okay, tell more about you. This kind of introductory part of the information networking. I think the time was not barely sufficient, but introduction. What projects each of us were doing, and why we were doing, and what were our interests.
Nice. Are there any things in your projects that you talked about as like, oh, I'm really struggling with this, and maybe helped each other out a little bit?
Not very much. I think we were working on relatively adjacent spaces, like 3 or 4. 3 of us were working either machine learning, self-driving cars, things like that, robotics.
Cool. Yeah, in the future, one good question to bring into that is like, oh, you know, are you getting stuck on anything with your projects? And then you can say, oh yeah, I'm getting stuck with X, Y, or Z. And then you can actually, you know, go into Slack and chat with each other and try and solve those problems together. So whenever you're in a conversation, and I think you did a great job with what you just described there, but always try and think like, what would be a good next conversation? Like, what thing did we touch on that we could come back to later? And that's just one way to continue the conversation over time. Anyone else have any good conversations in their breakouts? Any topics to share? I know. This is, go ahead.
Looks like Joe's trying to share, but I think he's muted.
Oh, Joe, hit the unmute button there.
Is that working now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I was just gonna say we're trying to figure out ways to meet, because I'm like in the Sacramento area, and we were talking to Roy and we were talking about our group. We were talking about meeting in person. Sometimes it's not easy.
Yeah.
You know, because the groups, you know, I guess you can go to your industry and try going online to see. Like for example, I'm in VR. I just finished the VR nano degree, and you know, I went to like I missed GDC, but I did go to Augmented Reality World Expo, and it's cool to see those things, because then I think that's a good venue to meet. But you got to be willing sometimes to travel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is tough sometimes, especially when you're kind of far away from like a main city or something like that. But one thing that I have seen work is like if you're having trouble finding groups to go to, starting your own and then trying to find, like, there might be a dozen people in your area who are all interested in the same thing, but there's just no meetup group yet. And so you get to be the leader of the meetup group. And if you're putting on the events, everyone comes to you as the expert, which is always fun too. But yeah, definitely there's, and you know, you're in virtual reality, so maybe there's some virtual ways to get a group together that I'm not even privy to.
There's no excuse, I guess, in virtual reality, right?
Yeah, don't they have like that weird Facebook conference that I saw online a while back?
Yeah.
We were like sitting around a table with avatars. Very cool. Well, I know we're coming up against time here, so this whole presentation today was about networking and connecting with you know, the world, but I also want to make sure that you're connecting with each other. So go to LinkedIn and make sure that you're all connecting with one another, and continuing these conversations and continuing to help each other out beyond this presentation. Slack, if you're all on Slack, I believe you should be. Make sure that you're you know, trying to stay in touch and bringing your career questions to the full community. So if you have the time right after this meeting, please go over to LinkedIn and follow the Udacity profile. Additionally, every week on Thursdays, I'm going to be sharing a new like careers tips video based on questions that people are asking. So engage with people in the comments there, ask questions, we'll answer them, and it'll all be, you know, a good way to get everyone sort of in on the same conversation together and get some visibility for y'all. And then we're also going to be sending you a survey right after this presentation, just to sort of rate it, let us know your thoughts, and give us a little feedback on how we can improve. Because that's the whole thing here, right? We're all trying to learn, we're all trying to grow, and we're all trying to just like bring the best value to the community as we can. And you know, we appreciate your feedback as we, you know, continue that journey. So thank you all so much. I'll hang on for a few minutes. If anyone has more questions or would like to chat a little bit, I'll hang on for about 5-10 more minutes. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, and there's my email if you just want to hit me up personally. I'm also on Slack in the alumni group. So yeah, that's our presentation today. Thank you all so much for joining and for coming along on this journey, and I really wish you all the best in both your job hunt and in building your network.
Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Martin.
All right, and I'll just hang out if there are any questions. Otherwise, you're all free to go.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, if we're gonna go out there and you know, start looking for positions, I know there's like partners with Udacity, right?
Yeah.
How do you go about pursuing that avenue? Do they post to like boards or something in the alumni network, or how does that?
Yeah, there are a couple of boards. I think the best thing to do, like the main thing with the alumni or with the partner network, is that they know about Udacity. So we've spent a lot of time introducing them to the programs, introducing them to grads, like getting people hired there. Well, not getting people hired there, but people have gotten hired there. And so the main thing is that when you go talk to people at that company, they're fairly aware. So it's just a nice way to prioritize companies so that you're talking to people who understand the program that you've gone through and won't come at you with a bunch of questions. They actually get it before you even go talk. So there's not any, you know, really concrete like introduction or anything like that. But it is just good to know that when you go talk to these companies, they are aware of the program and what you've gone through and what you know and what your capabilities are.
One quick other question is it out of line to like say, I mean, will they reply back to you if you like contact a hiring person, that they have like a position out there and you just want to talk to them and ask questions? Is that like something that people do, you know?
Oh,
Just
yeah. So there's a few different ways to reach out. I think the best way to reach out is to reach out to the person who has the job you want, because that's the person who's going to be able to give you the best information about the role to make sure that, number one, you want that job. Because, you know, different companies call the same job title, call different things the same job title. So you might actually talk to someone who's, like, let's just use the example of a program manager. You might talk to 5 different program managers at 5 different companies, and their jobs are different. And so you want to reach out to the person who has the job title that you suspect you want. And then what can end up happening in that conversation is that they're not the hiring manager, but they can refer you to the hiring manager. And now you're coming in through a connection at the company and not just a blind person. And it's easier to just talk to someone about their job than to try and, like, you know, get directly to the hiring manager. But I also, if you have the hiring manager's information and email them directly. I see no issue with that, as long as you are doing it in a tactful way of being like, hey, I saw this. I'm really curious to learn more. Would you be open to chatting? And just like starting from a curiosity questioning, the same way you just sort of put it there. And saying like, here's my LinkedIn if you'd like to learn more about me, but I'm just really curious to learn more about the company and the needs.
Okay. Thanks, Martin.
Yeah. All right. I'll grab one more question if anyone has one. Otherwise, we can wrap up for the day.
Well, if no one gonna ask, maybe I can.
Yeah.
So the thing is, all my jobs were remote ones. I'm from Eastern Europe. I worked with Western European companies from United States. And the thing is, currently, I do not, relocating is not an option for me. So networking in strictly remote online context, how viable is it, and what should I be aware of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to make sure I understand your question, you're saying, how do you network when you're remote, right?
Yep. If I'm strictly in remote context, like I cannot go and grab coffee with that person.
Yep. Online forums and Skype chats are going to be your best friends. So the first question is, how do you find people? So what you want to do is narrow down, you need to do some research to figure out what companies hire remote roles. And one good thing to do is just type in remote into LinkedIn search and see who pops up. Maybe you'll find out that there's a lot of companies that have remote people that you're not even aware of. But you know, there's a lot of different Google searches and websites that talk about remote work and companies that are much more focused on remote work over others. And almost every company has some level of remote work, or at least any large company. And now that everyone's so mobile, but so I would say the main thing you want to do is reach out to people to learn more about companies, specific companies, and then in those conversations, find out if they ever work with remote folks. And so, do you have a pretty clear focus on what industry you want to work in and what job title you're going after?
Pretty much.
Okay, so pick your top 3 companies in that industry. Look at all of their partners and all of their competitors, and then try and just find your way in to one of those companies. So the nice thing is, if you pick a company as your center point, let's say my favorite company is Apple. All right, just use a generic example. So who are all of Apple's competitors, and who are all of Apple's partners? You know, I think Beats was a partner before they were bought and all sorts of different stuff. So then you spider out from there. Here's all the partners, here's all the competitors. I'm going to talk to people at all these companies. So I'm like circling the bullseye, right? And then you look at all their partners and competitors. You've got this nice web kind of going outward. And you can just say, like, one of these companies hires remote people for sure. I just got to figure out which one. And you get as close as you can to the center of that target.
Oh, that's a great suggestion. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. And I think we can wrap it up there, unless there is someone with a burning question on their mind. I'll take that as a no. Thank you so much for jumping on the call today. I really do appreciate all your time, and I wish you all the best of luck in your search.
Thanks so much, Martin.
Cheers.
Thank you.